Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Good morning. It's 7:06 now as your Wednesday morning chugs along. We got a busy day ahead of us. Already a couple of busy hours behind us here on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for joining us at this moment. We're going to get you up to speed and charged forward on your busy day as well. Coming up at 8:05, Gordon Chang will talk about the first official meeting now set with China over tariffs. And then at 8:35, the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares, he'll give us an update on an investigation he's launching into Loudoun County Public Schools over transgender policies. Again, it's O'Connor and Company with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
A pretty cool moment yesterday in the Oval Office when the president announced that there was an agreement with the Houthis. The agreement is the Houthis have decided that we'll stop sending drones over. Please stop bombing us. Here's how the president characterized it, Cut 15.
We had some very good news last night. The Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that. And we will stop the bombings.
I think what this means is they don't want to die anymore. And, of course, this has to do with their blocking of ships being able to easily move in and out of that very important and strategic location there. They're funded by the Iranians. They hate the Israelis and the Jews. It's complicated. But one thing that has been resolved is they're going to stop messing with U.S. ships. Between that decision yesterday and also the Supreme Court decision to lift that block on the transgender policy at the Pentagon, we wanted to touch base with an expert. So we got one. He's the chairman of the board of directors for Veterans on Duty, Jeremy Hunt, former military intelligence officer with the Army. Good morning, Mr. Hunt. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I want to get to the Houthi thing second, actually. Let's start with the transgender policy because we're told that this is going to be devastating for people in the military in terms of cohesion, in terms of morale, that there's going to be brothers and sisters who are serving shoulder to shoulder right now with people who are now waking up this morning out of a job, and that can be unnerving for people in the rank and file. Can you sort of shed some light on this and sort of talk us through exactly what's going to happen?
Well, of course, there are those on the left that want to cast this kind of doom and gloom picture of, oh, my goodness, what could happen here? Well, really, it's a return to the status quo before President Obama entered office and started, trying to play all of these social experiments with our military. It's really a return to that time where we are focusing on lethality and readiness. Mission readiness. The purpose of the armed forces is the ability to deter, fight, and win our nation's wars, and that's it. There's really no other kind of social experimentation purpose that our military is designed to take a part in. Our military is designed for that particular purpose, to deter, fight, and win our nation's wars. And so when you look at the policy, do you understand that even for folks who have severe peanut allergies are not allowed to actually serve in the military? I mean, so of course, if you are on hormone blockers and all sorts of kind of hormone therapy, and you have lots of different types of medical requirements for folks who are transgender, that is a mission readiness problem, and it has nothing to do with picking on people who are who have that who are transgender, but it does have everything to do with making sure that that units are able to deploy to any place in the world and deter, fight, and win our nation's wars whenever they are asked to do so.
Jeremy, it's interesting. There are 1.2 million active service members right now, and only 4,000 are transgender. So it affects a very small percentage of the military. Yet the policy in the military, and I don't think a lot of people realize that the military was willing to actually provide for free transgender surgeries. And so it was attracting, it created an incentive if you identified as a transgender and needed transgender surgery that you could actually join the military and have it paid for. So that's also a problem within the military, that it would potentially grow. This population of transgender service members would potentially grow because of the services offered to these people. Isn't that correct?
That's exactly right. I mean, under President Obama and turned under President Biden, there was this, this really an incentive here that we will pay for your gender transition surgery. We will pay for all the hormone therapy. Those are American tax dollars not going towards weapons and equipment and unit readiness for war. Instead, going to quite expensive medical procedures for individuals in that category. And so that is something that has not been done before, before prior to the Obama years and the Biden years. And it is something that for many of us who care deeply about our military and our men and women who are serving, we want them to have the best resources. We want them to be the most prepared so that they can deploy anywhere in the world at the drop of a dime and be able to execute their mission and not focused on these kind of pet political projects by certain individuals who held the White House in years past.
Has it been announced? Because you're right, it goes back to the Obama administration, which means over 10 years ago and over 15 years ago, I believe, is when this policy first got put in. That means theoretically you could have people who have 15 years experience in the military of these 4,000 people who are now, what is their disposition? Will they be honorably discharged? Will they be reassigned? What is going to happen?
Well, of course, we'll have to see, exactly how Secretary Hegseth kind of rolls all this out and then how it will ultimately be executed. But we have to remember, I mean, as I mentioned before, if you have a peanut allergy, you can't serve in the military. If you have if you have certain issues where I remember when I was serving, one of the big things was folks thought that I just have a little minor dental problem. Well, if you are in a higher dental category where your teeth are going to require a lot of issues, and you also can't deploy. I mean, there are so many. The thing about service is that service is not a right. It is a privilege, and that is something that Secretary Hegseth has been really doing a great job of really instilling back into our military.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just they were let in, and now I just was curious what their disposition would be now that the policy has changed. Let's get to the Houthis here. It's amazing to me that the media has not really focused. We have a lot here. We've talked about it quite a bit, but our military has been under constant attack since October 7th from the Houthis. It's remarkable that our Navy has not suffered more casualties and more damage. What do you make of the finally the what appears to be a temporary resolution on this because the Trump administration finally fought back?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, this is huge, great news for the United States and indeed the world. I mean, the Houthis, and just for those who are just will need a little more context. The Houthis have been, as you said, attacking literally since October 7th. They are funded by Iran. They are equipped by Iran, and they have been really a strategic mission to block international shipping lanes and shipping routes that are key to make sure that we are able to get our products across the seas and to also receive different products.
And all of Europe, by the way. Europe uses those shipping lanes even more than the U.S. does.
That's exactly right. I mean, they are used by all of us. I mean, it's key for international commerce, and the Houthis know this, and that's why they've been really blocking those lanes literally since October 7th, 2023. And then on top of that, they've also been taking these kind of pot shots and taking and firing upon U.S. military personnel and also firing upon our allies as well. Really attacking Israeli military as well. I mean, they have been a major problem, and all of this, of course, started under President Biden, who really just showed so much indecision when he was in office on how to deal with the Middle East and how to support our ally Israel, and it was just such a mess that it emboldened our enemies, and so that's why Iran has been funding the Houthis and supporting them. So now, the great news is that now we have a President Trump, who was determined, as he got into office, that we are going to end the threat of these Houthis, and he's been firing precision strikes upon their bases, and now we are seeing the results of that determination as they have now capitulated and said, "Listen, we are no longer going to fight."
weak leadership gets Americans killed and our allies killed, and that's one thing sadly we learned all too well under Biden. Hey, well done. Thank you for joining us, Jeremy Hunt of Veterans on Duty. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
7:16.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Hey, Julie, remember when you had a mass shooting terrorist attack in your backyard at that baseball diamond in Alexandria?
I do recall, Larry. I recall that very well.
It was 2017. It was a specific political terrorist attack against Republican congressmen as they were practicing for the Congressional baseball game.
Yes.
And we're now learning, what is it, 8 years later, Julie, we're learning just how badly botched the FBI probe was into this. Congressman Jim Jordan, Judiciary Committee last night on Hannity. Take a listen.
The guy who shoots Steve has a piece of paper in his pocket, a hit list with the names and descriptions of 6 other members of Congress. He's not a domestic terrorist, but pro-life Catholics are. That was the mindset at the FBI before Kash Patel. That was their mindset, and so they have to label this something different because it doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit the right-wing MAGA hillbillies in flyover country. They're the domestic terrorists, and so they label it something else, and it was complete BS. Never forget the disdain that they have for regular Americans. Remember Peter Strzok? That text message he sends to Lisa Page where he says, I'm in the Walmart and I can smell the Trump supporters. So that's what the information we finally get because Kash Patel released the entire case file and we could look at it all. The Intel Committee could look at it all. And they did great work exposing the ridiculous stuff that Andy McCabe, Jim Comey, and Chris Wray, how they ran the FBI. And what a difference now with Kash Patel running that place.
Now, the Steve that Jim Jordan is referring to, of course, is Steve Scalise, now the majority leader in the House. And he was on as well. He reacted to this. Steve Scalise was shot near death.
Nearly killed. Yep.
Yeah, here's Steve Scalise.
You know, God answered a lot of prayers that day, but when the FBI initially pulled those of us from the baseball shooting into a hearing after we got out of the hospital, they called it suicide by cop. And we were so offended, we walked out of the hearing. We said, how can you call that suicide by cop when he tried to kill the 2 cops that were with me that day? David Bailey and Crystal Griner were both shot during the shootout, and the shooter tried to kill all of us that day, and it was politically motivated, and yet in their report they said it wasn't politically motivated, and in fact they withheld facts that the shooter had on his person that showed that he had political motivations to then say falsely that it wasn't politically motivated.
Yep.
You know, this begs the question, why was the FBI trying to mislead back in 2017? I applaud Kash Patel for getting the facts out and getting the record corrected. But the FBI in 2017 falsely put out information. Look, Jim Jordan's name was on that shooter's hit list, too. And he had very dire intentions to kill Republicans. That's what he said he wanted to do. It wasn't suicide by cop. And yet the report by the FBI initially tried to claim it was. It was false.
That's the James Comey, Chris Wray, FBI. These are the same people who didn't say, would refuse to say Antifa was a terrorist group.
Yeah,
and they keep putting out those reports that say that the biggest domestic threat of violence and terrorism comes from conservative right-wing groups.
Right, and we still see this. We still see this narrative today from the left that the biggest, the biggest threat is white men. Look, Hodgkinson actually texted his wife. He said, I'll be home tonight. He looked for directions from the Alexandria ball field to go home. This was not, he hid behind a storage container. This was not the actions of a suicidal man. So it was totally made up in order to hide the fact that this guy was a domestic terrorist targeting Republicans. That was a very inconvenient fact. And I will tell you something else, Larry, because I live 1 mile. My child has played in that ball field. Let me tell you something. The leadership of this city who talked to him at the YMCA, okay? Yep. The former mayor, the just former mayor and a man who was mayor several years before talked to Hodgkinson, heard nothing. There were no interview. I don't think they were even interviewed by authorities, and the media certainly didn't interview people. This Hodgkinson was known in the community. in that community, that deep, dark blue Alexandria filled with crazy libs. Just you want to know how crazy they are? See how they treated J.D. Vance, who lived in that community.
That's right.
Same community as where that.
Well, he blended right in. This Hodgkins guy did.
Yeah, he did. And he hung out, and he talked to people, and he was radical. And the leaders of the political leaders of Alexandria, Virginia, knew it. Right.
So, and yet that was the FBI. That was the FBI and the Justice Department that the Tom Tillises of the world protected as the real law enforcement professionals, the people who deserve it. And yet Ed Martin and Kash Patel, they're in danger of politicizing the FBI and the Justice Department under Donald Trump. Let's not forget, this happened under Donald Trump's watch because he wasn't as diligent as he is this time, making sure that his people are running these organizations, because those organizations are part of the problem. It's 7:23.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:37 now, as this Wednesday morning just flies by before our eyes. Thanks for joining us here on O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 8:05, Gordon Chang will be our guest to get his insights into the first now official meeting between China and the Trump administration over tariffs. And then at 8:35, we'll check in with the Virginia Attorney General. Virginia? Is that what's happening now? The Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Hey, Jules.
Good morning.
Do other people call you Jules? Am I the only one?
You know, that was what people called me in college. It sort of fell off. I think I was like Julie when I, got a job, and not so much anymore. I love it though.
I wish to be called Julie. For a little while there professionally, my old business cards when I worked in theater said Lawrence. Yes, I was so pretentious.
It's a great name.
Well, it's because I was very young.
Well, that's the thing. Julie isn't pretentious. Like Julie, what was I thinking? It's like, Julie sounds so much better, so much more professional. I don't know.
Jules Gunlock is a great name.
Yeah, you're welcome to call me that.
We make silly things, but my daughter, famously, I'm sorry, we'll get to Scott Bessent in the Congressional hearing in a minute. This is more important. Because my daughter just got married. At the it was hilarious because my daughter Veronica, which I think of all my kids have great names, but Veronica O'Connor is a great name.
It is melodic, a great name.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
Right? And she has her mother's maiden name as her middle name, which is Chinese Lu. So she's Veronica Lu O'Connor. Come on, that's a fine name, right? Well, as soon as she got into high school, she demanded nicknames. She wanted this. So every year she had a new nickname. And so as people were going up and giving their toasts and giving their dedications, everybody called my daughter a different name. It was hilarious.
What were some of the nicknames?
Ronnie. Ronnie was a big one when she was at the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
V-Ron for a while there.
Yeah.
For Veronica. V-Ron.
Yeah.
For a little while, one of her high school friends said, I'll never forget when I first met Versace. I kid you not. She went by Versace for a while there. What is with kids and their names? It's like you have a perfectly good name, and now she's changed it and taken this other guy's name. Unbelievable. Anyway, the Treasury Secretary yesterday was facing some congressional hearings. Scott Bessent continues to be between Bessent and Rubio. You've got a couple of major success stories here in terms of the president's cabinet. I think in general it's a strong cabinet, but these two have really risen above, shockingly, because I don't think the expectations were ginormous for either of them. Bessent yesterday was asked about some of the changes that have been made thanks to DOGE, thanks to the Department of Government Efficiency, and some of the things that have been discovered about how the federal government has operated over the past several decades. And listen to this revelation from our Treasury Secretary. Cut 18, please.
Can you define for the committee today what an improper payment is and some examples of what you're seeing and why these procedures were not already in place before, Mr. Secretary?
Well, it's a bit mystifying why they weren't in place. And what we are seeing is that there was a very complacent upper level of management in many departments across the entire government. What I can say at Treasury, that of the 1.5 billion payments we send out every year, they're required to have something called a TAS, a Treasury account symbol. We discovered that more than one third of those payments did not have a TAS number. So as the Appropriations Committee, you should be shocked by that, because how can a payment be tracked back to an appropriation? Only through the task number. So there was no accountability. So that is why the 450 organizations that sit above Treasury, where Treasury acts as the paymaster, are unable to pass an audit. So we have the crack down on that. Every payment now requires a task number. Very simple. And I will tell you that the mid-level employees who I have had come into Treasury to talk to me about that feel liberated. That they have, they tell me, I've been here 20 years. I've always wanted to do this. I've been here 14 years. And they feel as though they now have agency and are making a difference towards saving the American taxpayer money.
I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars that was never accounted for. Never, and nobody said anything.
Right. And I'm so glad Bessent, notice he said, as appropriators, you should be shocked at this. This is a congressional failure. The way in which this government is supposed to work is Congress is supposed to have oversight over these agencies. You call them up, you ask them what they're doing, you ask where the money goes. Congress long ago gave up that role, right? Now it's just these they have hearings, and you got, people like, these left-wing lunatics getting up there and just bloviating about their own political issues. They don't actually care what goes on in these agencies. They ceded that a long time ago. And you have such abuse of the system. And thank God for Bessent. Thank God for Doge. This is starting to come out. But again, it's a failure of Congress.
In fact, Elon Musk, Cut 26 here, actually talked about this specifically, saying, listen, I'm against some of this spending, but even if you're for the spending, you should at least demand that the money is going to what you said it was going to go to.
Exactly.
Cut 26.
The example is that even if you agreed with supporting alpaca farmers in Peru, well, actually, most of the money never made it out of D.C. It's going into the pockets of people in the neighborhood.
What percentage?
And they didn't even get to Peru.
Right. So what percentage do you think doesn't even get to the destination it's supposed to?
I believe the GAO estimates, so this is not our estimate, I believe it was on the order of only 10 to 15 cents on the dollar actually gets to the end recipient, whether you agree with that cause or not.
There you go. All right. We've got more on this, of what Doge has uncovered in just a short time. They've been working, whether Elon Musk is running it or not, as he phases himself out. Also, more from Secretary Bessent and his meeting with China coming up in a moment. It's 7:43.
WMAL, making sense of world events, because those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
By the way, as we conclude this idea about the unaccounted for hundreds of millions of dollars that never actually got a task number accounting to it, so that no one could come and say, okay, this money we appropriated, did it go where it was supposed to go? So God knows where it went. Guess who helped uncover that scandal in our federal government?
Who?
Well, the most famous member of Doge, other than Elon Musk, the man known as Big Balls. It's true. This is Cut 25. This is that guy. He was on Jesse Waters' show on Fox News, and he talked about it.
Fraud and waste. And to do that, we started looking at the payment computers. And as mentioned earlier, there's no accounting of what payments actually go to in the payment computer. So, you look at a specific line item, like $20 million. You're like, okay, well, what is this money going to? And for the majority of payment systems, it's like, well, we don't really know. And
yeah, they're like, what? That would be the response.
Is this the most basic responses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. With a nickname like that, I expected his voice to be deeper. But yeah, he discovered that this money is like, okay, where is this money going? We don't know.
It's interesting. Luke Rosiak has a new story out about something called the African Development Foundation. The CFO refused to let Doge see its books. And Luke goes into the reasons for that. But this is why people hate Doge so much. Why you have Northern Virginia Rep. Don Beyer freaking out every time Doge wants access to these books and to see where this stuff is going. Because it's dirty. And it has been corrupted. And it has gone on for years and years. And taxpayers have been paying for this stuff.
This is a thing you notice about career politicians like Don Beyer and other people who have been in this town. Joe Biden was the perfect example of this, by the way. Yeah. They never talked about what they did, they accomplished. They never talk about what they accomplished. They never talk about what gets fixed. They never talk about how things are better. All they talk about is, well, I voted to appropriate this money. I voted for this money. I voted for, okay, you voted for the money, but it didn't do anything. Yeah. It's like, Biden will still, scream about how his great infrastructure bill, the bill that brought us 7 charging stations for electric vehicles that cost us billions of dollars. Because the money gets appropriated, no one sees where the money goes, and the problem persists.
Yes, and in this case,
that's DC.
And in this case, Luke Rosiak has revealed that this CFO, who didn't want Doge to get in to see his books, steered contracts to a friend. So it's so dirty, Larry. It is so deep. And, again, the politicians who just sit back and have allowed this to happen, they don't want it revealed to the taxpayers. Thank God for Bessent, for Doge, and for Big Balls.
Well, I'll just let that stand, I guess. I'm glad you're grateful. It's 7:53.